Hi everybody, my name is Brian Armentrout. I am the CEO of the Food Leadership Group, and this is episode 2 in our series on the Food Safety Modernization Act. As many of you know, I spoke with Martin Hahn over at the office of Hogan and Lovells in Washington, D.C., and they're one of the main law firms that's been dealing with the implementation of the Food Safety Modernization Act. For episode 2, it's my distinct pleasure to talk with Dr. Robert Brackett. And he is with, and this is always a mouthful, you're the Vice President and Director of the Institute of Food Safety and Health at the Illinois Institute of Technology.
Right.
Excellent. And kind of what I wanted to go over today is to build on what Martin and I talked about in episode 1. So the Food Safety Modernization Act now has been out for a while, and what people don't really understand with things like this is the law was passed in 2011. After that, now FDA has to figure out how do we actually write the regulations to manage this. And there's been a lot of effort between industry, academia, and the regulatory agencies to figure out how do all these things now interact, because it's the interpretation of the law where things really get complicated. And part of what Martin and I spoke about then was what have been some of our key learnings relative to FSMA so far? What are the things that are working? What are the things that people need more clarification on? And a big piece of that then is the next step, which is the training piece of it. And that's where you come in, Bob, and the Institute. And the training piece has been really huge. I think one of the key things from my perspective has been the different groups learning from Seafood HACCP and Juice HACCP and building a collaboration with FDA to figure out what's the best way to do these things. And so your institute is really at the center of that whole process.
In 2011, when the Food Safety Modernization Act was passed, FDA and Congress recognized that this is going to be a big change, especially for small and mid-sized companies. And they recognized the need that we're going to have some sort of training, some sort of help to help them comply, especially for the requirement for the preventive controls qualified individual, which has to be at least available for the food safety plans in each facility. Well, FDA discussed with us how they thought we might do that, and they asked us to host this new idea, which was an alliance based on Seafood HACCP Alliance, which is now self-sustaining, doesn't receive government funds, partly because we already had this collaborative relation set up with the industry and with FDA, but also because we had history with the Juice and Seafood Safety Alliances as well when we had some of our FDA colleagues. So in later in 2011, we started rolling out with this, organizing the alliance. It continued to build, and in the meantime, we were writing what they call the standardized curriculum. This is the curriculum that FDA said everybody who takes this course has to know everything in that curriculum. Not the experts necessarily, but these are all things they had to be exposed to. And so we developed the curriculum, and then in the fall 2015, we actually started with some pilot training sessions, gave us great feedback on how we could better connect with the students or the learner. And then we later, very late in 2015 and really beginning of 2016, started training in earnest, both the preventive controls qualified individuals, the preventive controls part of the course, and secondarily, a really important part, developing a cadre of lead trainers who would actually go out and do this training, because we weren't going to do all of it ourselves, we just managed the whole system. And so to date, we've had some great successes. We've trained about 18,000 people in preventive controls, that many certificates, and about 800 to 900 lead instructors. And these are not just in the United States, these are global. So we're at the point now where we're looking, doing a great job domestically, but we're really looking at the international market too, because there's a lot of people that are going to need to be trained out there as well. So that's sort of the background.
Wow, those numbers are up even significantly since I think the last time we spoke. I think the last time I heard it was around 600 lead trainers and 10,000. Wow, so that's a significant increase.
It's slowed down. It continues to go up.
So from the training now, we've been going through this now, we've been learning quite a bit. So from the PCQI training so far, what have been some of the key learnings that you've found out so far through this process?
Well, there's a couple of things. One is that many of the people who come to the PCQI training don't necessarily have some of the requisite background in some of the basics, namely good manufacturing practices. And so this is something that we try to stress with people that are signing up, that this is not a GMP class. It's expected that you have a foundation of GMP, and if you don't, you really should go get some other training in that area before you do this. So that's one thing. The other thing is that it takes a little bit of time to absorb. When they take the training, an integral part, a very important part of the training, are the exercises, where you have breakout groups that get together and actually disagree on how to apply preventive controls. And that's part of the learning process. One of the things that the industry lobbied for and got with FSMA is flexibility. That is, a one size does not fit all. Well, with that comes more responsibility and understanding how you apply a preventive control, and the fact that there may not be just one way to do it. There may be several different ways to accomplish the same thing, and that's okay. You just have to know how to explain that to an FDA investigator and be able to document what you're doing and why you're doing it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that's what's so great about the training as well, is it's not only industry that's going through this training, it's FDA that's going through this training as well, correct?
That is correct. We've got in the same classrooms, it may be state regulators in some cases. All of the investigators, the food investigators at FDA, will take this exact same curriculum, the same training, and in many cases it's in the same class with the regulated industry and allied industries, such as auditors or even suppliers to the industry. So yeah, it's meant to be cross-fertilizing each other so that everybody's hearing the same thing at the same time.
And I think that's probably one of the best things that's come out of this whole process. So if I'm a individual working in a small company, let's say that I'm a small company making fruit bars or something like this, and there's only 50 or so people working there, and you're sitting down talking with them, why should I go through this training?
Well, the first reason that is a requirement of the preventive controls rules, that you must have a preventive controls qualified individual. There are two ways that one can do that. One is by experience, someone who's worked forever in food safety in a company, and the second way is to take this training. And so this training is probably the easiest way, 2.5-day course, and as long as you actually stay in the whole course and listen through the whole thing, you do get a certificate that proves to an FDA investigator that that person is a qualified individual, preventive controls qualified individual. We also know that in larger companies, they may have a number of individuals within the same company taking it, number one, so that they can train their own people, so they have lead trainers that they've trained. But so they always have someone around that's qualified to be able to talk about the food safety plan and to give input into the food safety plan.
That's a very good point. I took the PCQI training earlier this year at the IFT conference, and there was quality managers and procurement people and corporate people from other functions as well, and so it gives them a perspective on why these programs are important as well.
Yeah, the other thing that we found is that sometimes we'll have groups, commodity groups, say someone who just specializes in edible oils, for instance, and they get into it. And many of the models deal with a lot of different things. They may deal with the nutrition bar, they may one on peanut butter, one may deal with spices. And they say, what's the point? I'm never going to do this stuff. Why should I have to learn about this stuff too? But by the time they get through, when you go through, it's the process of how you develop the food safety plan, not the end product itself that's important here. They realize why different types of foods need to be considered. Even if they're just going to work with one commodity in their own facility, they at some point may deal with other parts of the industry, and they have to have the big picture.
Oh, absolutely. And it allows you also to look at new emerging risks, because one of the things that we are always surprised by is the new and creative ways that bacteria are able to get into our food supply.
Yes. Pathogens have made big liars out of food microbiologists in the past.
Absolutely. And there's things that we've seen over the years that we would never think bacteria would survive in, and there they are.
Right.
All right. So okay, I'm convinced. I'm at a plant, and I'm like, yep, I need to do this training. What's the best way, do you think, to then research and find out where that training can be taken?
Well, a couple ways to do this. The easiest way is to go to the FSPCA website, and if you go to Google and you type in FSPCA, it will be one of the top 1 or 2 searches that will come up on that. So you go to that, and there is a list of upcoming classes that's on that. Now, there are lots of classes at any one time. In fact, there's probably 20 or 30 classes in any 1 week that will be going on someplace. Many of these are private within a company, but we're in the process of launching a new web-based information system called the FSPCA Community. That is going to be the platform for the Technical Assistance Network. We have one Technical Assistance Network for technical questions and for training, just to match what FDA has on their website for regulatory and policy questions. And so once you go to that FSPCA community, one will be able to download a list. And at this point, it's a spreadsheet list, but eventually in the next couple months or so, it will be live, interactive. And you'll be able to see all of the places that the training is scheduled to be presented, how much they're charging, who the instructors are.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's a very good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Another thing that people are worried about here is these different deadlines that are out here relative to the size of the company. So depending on if you're a large company or a small company or a very small company, you have different points of compliance, correct?
That is true. And just so this is breaking news because it hasn't even hit the news yet today, but FDA will be releasing today their final compliance dates and changes that were originally proposed. And then later also, a real important part for the Prevent Controls Alliance is going to be the first 5 chapters of the hazards guide that has been long awaited from FDA. So that will go public today, is public on their website right now.
Oh, wow, I didn't know that. That's great. One of the key learnings that I've had as a consultant out in the field dealing with these companies is the deadlines exist from a regulatory standpoint, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to wait. Because if I'm a company, let's say that I'm a large manufacturer buying from another company, I'm going to probably expect you to be in compliance earlier than later. And if you're a very small company and you've got 2 years or so to comply, I'm not necessarily going to wait for you. Plus, getting certified earlier gives you more of a chance to learn and get your system up to speed. So you definitely don't want to wait for the deadlines.
Absolutely. We've seen the same things that companies are being, or small companies or providers are already being asked to be compliant with as much, a year or two before they normally would have to be, but their customers want it now. And the earlier that one gets the training, that also gives them a competitive advantage as well in the marketplace.
Absolutely, very good point. So if I wanted to learn more about the Institute and the programs that you're developing, because it's huge, you guys have all kinds of stuff going on, what are some good places to go? You've mentioned FSPCA a little bit before. What are some other websites or other sources of information that you'd like to share?
Well, that's one. Again, the easiest way to get there is to go to Google and type in IFSH, IFSH, and you will see it pop up, Institute for Food Safety and Health. Go to our homepage. And we've got all sorts of information about the programs. We have educational programs that both master's and starting this year a PhD program in food science and nutrition. That's sort of the academic side of things. Different ways that you can become involved as a company. Training sessions. We've got a large training session, or not training session, a symposium coming up in September on whole genome sequencing and how that's going to impact the industry. We've got specialty sort of communications with the regulated industry to share what we're doing. And all these are open to the public, web-based webinars on where we are in our research program.
Wow, great. Excellent. Dr. Brackett, this has been extremely helpful. I'm sure this is going to answer a ton of questions that people have been asking me out there to help kind of clear up this confusion around all these different programs, because there's lots of activity going on out there. Really appreciate your time.
Glad to do it. Have a great day.